today.
No iron again.
Leanne, I normally wear a loud Hawaiian type shirt on a Friday, but I've just attended an LEP board meeting in Worcestershire. So I thought, as they don't know me, discretion was the better part of valour. Yeah.
Right. Good afternoon to those who are just joining us. The room's filling up. We're expecting a large number today. So those who are signing in now, you're actually going to have a little bit of privilege. For those that sign in a bit later, we'll go over to YouTube. So it's all being recorded there. Please let us know where you're from, specifically because we have obviously Wales represented well here today. It'd be great if you could give us your name and perhaps where you're from, whether you're from England, Wales, or even if you signed in from Northeast up in Scotland or anywhere else, that would be great. What your company is would be also interesting, and what you're looking to get out of it. That would be super. So please use the chat pane. You'll find there's a chat menu. And for those of you who haven't used Zoom before, the really important thing is for questions, if you could please put your questions in the Q&A menu. And if you own them, that's, in other words, you put your name in, we will try and bring you in live so that you can answer your questions to Leanne and Darren later on.
So I think with so many people coming in, Howard, we'll just give it another minute.
They're still rattling in, yeah.
I know, they're coming in thick and fast. I know they are. So I'll do my few words of welcome in about 30 seconds or so.
Yeah.
But as Howard said, while we're waiting to start, if you could just jot your name and your organisation down in the chat box, that would be helpful. Then we can...
Hi, Andy. Hello, Glenn. Hello, Rob. Hello, Antonia. Hello there, Greg. So we've got, as I can see it, 3 people who've owned up to Wales.
Yeah, I'm sure there's more than that looking at...
Another one's come in from Wales, Alistair. I think Gary's come in. Yep, super. This is great. Thanks very much for sharing all your information. Another one from Newport.
Oh yes, some well-known names coming in now, Howard.
Great.
Thank you for joining us. I think what I'll do, we're close on 100 people now, so I think what I'll do, I'll say my few words of welcome and then hand over to Howard for the house rules. So for those that are here for the first time, my name's Andrew Carpenter. I am Chief Executive of the Structural Timber Association. I'm also Chief Executive of Constructing Excellence in the Southwest and Constructing Excellence Midlands. And we 3 organisations have organised a series of webinars now for about 4 months, initially around COVID-19 issues, but now more recently we've widened the net, so to speak, to deal with other important issues. The 3 organisations for which I'm Chief Executive have now been joined by Constructing Excellence in Wales, which of course is particularly relevant today, Constructing Excellence in the Northeast, and the Housing Forum. And we 6 organisations now are bringing you twice weekly webinars until the end of the month anyway, taking a month off in August, but in July on a Tuesday and a Friday at midday. So thank you for joining us, it's much appreciated. I know your time is valuable, but I'm sure you agree with me that the next hour will be time well spent. So today, in addition to thanking Howard and John for hosting, and we have got a full house on Zoom, so we're having to move across now because we've reached our 100 on Zoom, so we're now moving across to YouTube. We're expecting about another 40. I would particularly like to thank Darren and Leanne for giving up their valuable time, coming to us today from Welsh Government. And I don't think there could be any doubt that modern methods of construction are now front and centre in terms of delivering the 300,000 homes per annum that it is acknowledged that we need. And I'm delighted that Welsh Government have joined us today, because I have to say my experience is that the Welsh Government are ahead of the curve when it comes to their strategy and what they're proposing. So today we're going to be looking at their innovative housing programme, and in particular at their MMC campaign. So really looking forward to that. Darren, Leanne, just before I hand over to you, I'll ask Howard just to give out the house rules, if you would. Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you, Andrew. I see actually we have not only someone from a different region, but another country. Welcome to Justin, who's joining us from Ireland. So to just run through things quickly, you've all found, I think, already the chat menu. Please keep going on that. But when it comes to questions, I wonder if you could please use the Q&A menu you'll find. If you tap your question in there, and if you want to own it, I'll do my best to bring you in so that you can ask your question live and indeed probably get a follow-up. In terms of if we get the chance and we want to bring more people in later on, there is always the hands raised facility. So if you raise your hands later on, we can bring you into the discussion. So without much ado, I'm now going to hand over to Darren and Leanne. Many thanks, over to you.
Cheers, Howard, and cheers, Andrew. Before I start the presentation today, I think it's worth, because of flicking between PowerPoint and the internet for the media content, we were going to play at least one of the media videos ahead of the presentation, and we might play the second one between me and Leanne swapping screens. So hopefully it runs well. But before I do my introductions, we'll play you one of the media case studies from a private sector scheme in year 2 of the Innovative Housing Programme, which I think frames what we'll cover in our presentation quite well. So let's hope the technology allows it to happen.
Live Eco is a sustainable developer who are building eco homes on the edge of Cardiff. I think house building needs to change. We need to build better quality homes with lower fuel bills. And also we need to move away from gas boilers and look at all electric solutions. It's really important to us that we build happy communities. I think people are starting to think about climate change and how they live. They're starting to think about renewable energy. I think if you do have very well designed homes with low bills and health and well-being as part of that formula, you have happy people. It's not easy to build better, so we've had funding from the Principality Building Society, and we've built in 3 phases, and this is the final biggest phase really. So the most important thing is that the fabric of the building is better than building regs. So we have a highly insulated building with very low air leakage. We're also putting PV panels on the roof, storage batteries on the walls, heat pumps in the homes, underfloor heating, and MVHR, which is an air filtration system. So there's a lot of kit going into the homes, which has been possible through the IHP scheme. And that tying in with the Welsh Government means we are keeping work and keeping labour, keeping materials here in Wales, and building Welsh homes for Welsh people. And I think this is the house building of the future.
So hopefully next I'll share my screen and we'll have the PowerPoint presentation and we can kick off the session. So again, thank you to Andrew and to Howard for inviting us today and for allowing us to come and present to yourselves. What we wanted to cover, and I know the main topic was modern methods of construction, and some people on the call may have seen a few of my slides previously, but we wanted to start off with the Innovative Housing Programme. Because I think that has been our feeder into the direction of travel of Welsh Government and the recently published strategy around modern methods of construction for social housing. So for people who don't know me, I'm Darren Hatton, the Senior Programme Manager for the last 2 years on the Innovative Housing Programme. I joined just after the Innovative Housing Programme launched in the second year, and have been obviously involved for the last sort of 24 months or so. This is where some people will sigh or maybe switch off, because I've done this a few times. But I think the start thing around the Innovative Housing Programme is to understand what innovation is. And I think where we've tried to steer the IHP programme is to look at an application of better solutions that meet new and existing housing market needs. So the next slide then is around speed of adaptation, because we mentioned in our modern methods construction that not everything we do is a modern method of construction. It's been around a long time. It's still considered against traditional as a modern method. So the image at the top is Fifth Avenue, New York in 1900. And the year before, the commissioner of the US Patent Office basically was doing himself out of a job by claiming everything that could be invented had already been invented. So the first image is horse-drawn carriages, and 13 years later, we'd made the workhorse redundant by that of the motor vehicle. And I think IHP was born out of a desire to do things differently. It was to create a demonstrator scheme to help Welsh Government understand what are the houses, the next generation of houses Welsh Government should be looking to support. And to do that, it introduced this programme to stimulate the design and delivery of new, affordable, quality homes. It was looking at speeding up delivery of homes to the market and trying to break the cycle of supply and demand, and the delivery of your traditional house builders almost being a slow delivery to keep the demand up and prices high. It was also looking at trialing new housing models and methods of delivery, obviously tackling fuel poverty, which is still an issue, helping to reduce carbon reduction targets by 2050, and also to prove and to, as we've progressed the programme, to look to mainstream some of these modern methods of construction. And the reasons for change, it didn't take too long, and these slides are about a year old, to find stories of poor quality new builds, and not particularly any particular producer, just in terms of the way house building is, the quality of new builds having a number of defects. But it's not only around quality of build. There are also pressing issues which have come out and are highly prevalent during COVID-19. With street homelessness, I think currently in Wales we've got around 850 people in emergency accommodation, relating to government wishing to protect people who are homeless. And for the first time in a number of those cases, those 850 people have engaged with social services on a continuous basis for a couple of months now. But the COVID crisis has also highlighted the number of people who, one, were homeless, and two, who were sofa surfing. So there are obviously pressing needs there for what we need to do as a government. And the other thing, a positive news story, is around some of the benefits of doing things differently. And the difficulty, I suppose, for some people in the is that the benefits are for the tenant and not necessarily the person who is building, and it's whether those costs can be factored into selling prices for the private sector. So I come back then to sort of reframe it back into the IHP and why we've got the programme. Great thing is, when IHP first launched, it was a 2-year programme and £20 million. Quickly into the first year, demand outstripped supply, and the programme was expanded to 3 years and an additional 70 million on top to make it a 3-year programme at 90 million pounds. The great thing is the programme and with its alignment, and I'll come on to the Wellbeing and Future Generation Act, has created positive news stories. It's the Housing Minister is very supportive that we've been able to secure additional money to continue the programme this financial year as well. And we are expecting to launch in the next few weeks. The other part of the programme, as well as doing all these bullet points, is the background context of before we had the COVID crisis, we had a climate change emergency, and before we had a climate change emergency, we've always had a housing crisis, and we've never seemed to have come out of a housing crisis for maybe the last 20, 30 years. There has always been a shortage of housing, and there is a desire of Welsh Government and the Housing Minister for us to get on and build more social housing and to actually meet the demand of social housing. And I think the next slide, which just shows who builds affordable housing in Wales, and this chart, which goes back to 1974, 1975, just shows who was building back in the late 70s right through to the to 2017, 2018. As everyone can see, the large green area was local authority house building. The blue and has predominantly been the largest developer, obviously, has been the private sector. And then the red line, red bar in the middle is the registered social landlords. In the context of where we're at the moment, the statistics are saying that we need to build 8,000 new homes across Wales every year to meet demand. And of the 8,300 homes each year, around 4,000 of those need to be affordable housing in Wales. If you look, the private sector is doing its job. It's building houses, and it would meet the housing need demands of those who don't need affordable housing. What we're not doing in Wales and haven't done in Wales for a long time is build enough affordable social housing to keep up with demand. And it is why we have around 65,000 people on housing waiting lists across Wales. And that hasn't gone away through the climate emergency and now the COVID crisis that we're currently in. There is still a housing crisis, and there has been for about 30 odd years, if not longer. So it's in that context that IHP is looking at how we can do things differently to speed up the process. In terms of the IHP program, I touched on that. The alignment of the program with the 7 goals enshrined in the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act. The Act is enshrined in everything that Welsh Government does, and any policies created in Welsh Government need to work with the Wellbeing and Future Generations Act and incorporate them in. And that's actually an interesting thing. So the pie chart below with the 7 goals, they are interesting, that how you fit them into a housing development. A prosperous Wales, I think that fits in quite easily. A resilient Wales, a healthy Wales, a more equal Wales. Those are things that I think people can easily fit into housing developments. A globally responsible Wales as well, in that sense, with a consideration of the embodied carbon of the building material in a house. Again, cohesive communities, we feel that fits in. We want well-designed developments that enhance a community and be able to have communities that engage with one another and the area around the development. I suppose the most difficult one in this is a Wales of vibrant culture and thriving Welsh language, and how you actually fit that into a housing development. You want to deliver 10 houses here. How do you actually hit those 7 goals? And that has generally been a difficulty within IHP around how people can evidence that they hit these goals. But we have got a technical specification, and we've, along with a steering group, have looked at how each one of these areas fit into housing development. So on the left, you've got the well-being goals, globally responsible, healthy, more equal, cohesive communities, etc. And then on the right, we've got the focus area in terms of housing. So CO2 emissions, capital, change, health, energy, space, and place. And obviously, in between the left and the right is the areas of work during construction, in use, and wider benefits. And we see them as being short-term, medium-term, and long-term benefits. And it's in that framing we want to see schemes that come through in part the Innovation Housing Programme. So year on year, I mentioned Welsh Government's budget. We expanded it to 90 million over 3 years. We have overspent on our programme, not massively, and the Minister agreed to the overspend, so we've actually financed 91 million across the programme over the 3 years. First year of the programme, it was launched. It was interesting to see what actually came in. As I said, it was before my time, but it's fair to say that a lot of the innovation in that first year of the programme, because the programme was launched mid-year and people needed to were unaware it was launching. A lot of the innovation was bolted on to pipeline development. It was stuff that was already going to be produced that year, but it wasn't necessarily going to be an innovative scheme. It was a traditional one, and they bolted on innovation to the houses. We supported 226 houses across 18 developments with an average development size of about 13 homes. And actually our grant intervention rate, what IHP funded, was around 86,000 per home. The following year, I like to call it IHP Year 1 Plus, because what we didn't see was much uptake on innovation. We just seen more of the same. And basically, I think Year 2, certain people who'd been funded in Year 1 were encouraged to do larger developments. So they put in for the same innovation. So the bar around innovation didn't really increase in the second year. But what did increase was the number of homes, and actually our grant intervention dropped by 21,000 per home. And as I said, we had seen a doubling of the number of homes being delivered per development, up to 27 homes. Third year, when we launched, we did make we did things slightly differently. We said there was a few different pots of money. There was one pot of money set aside for innovation that we hadn't previously supported. And then in addition, we also said, to give some people certainty about the journeys they were on, that if they submitted schemes that were looking to support innovation that we supported in the first 2 years, we would look to support them, but only if they were large-scale schemes, and that we were looking to get that scale and pace into the development and to get that as more normalizing that innovation. We supported the similar amount of homes, 608 homes in the third year. Again, the reduction in the level of innovation supported come down by another £11,000 per home. It's still really high at £54,000 per home. But again, what we've seen was a doubling of the average housing development scheme. And that is, the good thing around that is we have supported innovation that we've not previously supported, and it was at a higher intervention rate. So those averages would have actually been better if we would just continue the journey of seeking same again. But we did want to push the envelope in terms of the third year around the innovation that we were supporting. And I think we've done that, and I'll come later on to some of the schemes we've supported last year. So in total, the programme's initial aim was £90 million to contribute 1,000 affordable homes as part of the 20,000 affordable housing target this assembly term. And what the programme is committed to fund is actually 1,400 homes, of which 1,000 are affordable. And although we never intended the programme to move away from affordable homes, the 400 additional homes we've secured, either open market resale or open market rents, allow us to be able to monitor and evaluate lots of different tenure groups going forward. It will not just be the social housing. So there has been a positive for us in terms of not just using social housing tenants as the guinea pigs for these innovative houses. We've got people who genuinely want to own these houses and buy these houses, which is a real positive. Just so I don't do death by PowerPoint with bullet points, I've put some images of a couple of year one and year two schemes have progressed. So the following's a old garage site that Monmouthshire Housing Association have developed out with these 4 one-bed first-time buyer homes. And what's interesting in these is actually they are oversized one-bedroom homes, and they allow for easy conversion into a 2-bed house, so that people can grow within their first-time house. They haven't then got to look to move on as they sort of settle down, get married, have children, etc. They'll be able to stay in the same property and expand that property into a 2-bed. The next one is an extra care scheme up in Aberdare, and this is actually been completed recently and handed over. But these were a volumetric solution by a Welsh provider aimed at homes for the over 55s. The next scheme, this scheme has been supported, or the product has been supported a few times in the first year, and one of the second year schemes with Carmarthen Council. It's a T-solar solution using local Welsh spruce timber, and this particular scheme is ATEB Group Housing Association based in Pembrokeshire. The following one, this is a private sector development, and it was the first private sector scheme supported under IHP. The images of phase 1 and phase 2 development, and we introduced at the start phase 3 of the Live Eco scheme, which did get IHP funding. This is a IHP Year 2 scheme with Cardiff Council. Again, this is a volumetric modular solution, the home shell modular system. It's above our Welsh DQR standards. It's close to passive house, but performance exceeds building regs. There's a fast construction time of 3 months. It's a demountable system as well, so although these are there permanently, there is an intention, or you can actually demount them and move them on. And it's also to be open and honest. So this scheme is with Cardiff Council. They've had some difficulties with planning. This is an English provider as well who was unaware of Welsh legislation around sustainable urban drainage, etc. They've also had difficulties with agreeing contracts, and they have had some difficulties with logistics. In terms of the modulars arriving on a lorry, the area around the development site is perfectly fine for delivering lorries. You can see that in terms of the access roads around it are particularly spacious. But the difficulty they had was the single road into that site, sort of 300 yards away, would have difficulty accommodating the modular system. So they've had to come in a different route. And I think they've understood that the issue isn't just the site, it's actually the logistics of getting everything to site and needing to expand their view a little bit further and look down the road, which seems common sense, but they're sort of some of the issues we've encountered in the programme. Moving on to the third year of the programme, we've not put up images because obviously all of the schemes are currently looking to get to site and to build. But some of the schemes we supported includes a development of 35 zero carbon homes with Sarah Homes in Neath Port Talbot, Park Hadau, and those are open market rent houses. The work they're doing there, they're looking to tie in rents with a package deal of an electric vehicle, because obviously the houses are zero carbon, but they want the tenants who are in those houses to also look at their transportation emissions as well. So they're looking at trying to rent houses and electric vehicles at the same time. Swansea Council have been very successful in the innovative housing programme in developing a Swansea standard of housing, which are passive houses originally in year one, but they've progressed to become passive houses with active homes, and they've been working quite closely with Specific at Swansea University. As you've seen on the images, Monmouthshire Housing Association have done some really good work on garage sites, and they're continuing to develop 2 additional garage sites out in a progression on IHP Year 1 scheme. Cardiff Council are looking to develop a former Rumney High School site with 214 homes. Contrevi Conway are progressing MMC solutions using the Create an Enterprise factory up in Holyhead. We have supported an extra care scheme up with Flintshire Council, Marleyfield House this year, which is an expansion, a doubling of size of a daycare centre that already exists at Marleyfield House. The Link Cymru scheme we supported is a biophilic living concept and cross-laminated timber tower on City Road, which is 50 apartments. And some of those are also for the YMCA and for rough sleepers. And we've done a scheme as well with First Choice Housing Association, which is the Wellbeing Flexi Home, which is the first sort of modular scheme which is aimed at a young adult, and the module will be dropped on to their existing family home, but it'll be able to give the young adult some independence from their family, with lots of smart technology in that house to assist the young adult with medication, etc. And also they'll be able to have a direct line to VC in with social services. So there's been a real good link up with housing and social services on that particular scheme. It's also worth pointing out IHP so far, we have looked to support factory built houses. In year 2 of the programme, around £17 million of that went towards producing 200 homes from small factories located within Wales. And I think that was really the start of the journey onto the MMC, which Leanne will talk about in a couple of minutes. And the other thing to acknowledge is around IHP and the supporting the change in the main material for construction in homes. So over the last 30 years, I think 86% of all new builds in the UK have been masonry, and that's been followed up by 9% being built as timber framed homes. Obviously, there's been, in more recent years, a drive towards timber frame homes across all producers. And I think actually the figure in the most recent years is around about 30% of all homes being built as timber framed homes. But the IHP has supported 50 schemes to date, and 60% of all homes have used timber frame as the main construction material, which is a 6-fold increase on the 30-year UK building trend. And it highlights our desire as a government to move away from the traditional masonry construction that dominates the UK new build housing development. And as I've mentioned a couple of times, before COVID, we also had a climate emergency, and there is a drive to look to reduce carbon, not only in the use of a house, but also in the building materials of that house. I wanted to finish off really with IHP Year 4, to say that we'll be launching in the next 2 weeks. Yes, we've been delayed due to COVID-19. We have been, as a team, working really hard to make our program relevant during COVID-19. And we've been doing lots of work with our homelessness colleagues to realise that we've seen some of the solutions in the IHP program, and we can use those to really assist our homeless team with launching and rapidly deploying MMC solutions to move people out to the emergency accommodation that they're currently housed in because of lockdown. The program is going to launch with 20 million of capital and 10 million of loan money. As I said, the program is going to closely align with the launch of our MMC strategy, which launched at the end of February. The Minister's already agreed the 3 work streams for the program. We can't say anything at the moment, but apart from it'll be closely aligned with the MMC strategy, and we've looked to make the program relevant to COVID-19. There isn't any revenue money this year, but we are, as a team, progressing and looking to be able to access some research and development funding. And we hope by launch that we'll be able to have some positive news for that. As a program as well, we're only opening the 4th year to local authorities and RSLs. So we've closed the program off to private sector-led bids. And I think that's a reframing of the program back to its core around building affordable social housing. But we're not ruling out public-private sector partnerships, and they would be welcomed. We're just looking to ensure that in those instances, the lead bidder would be a local authority or a registered social landlord. Just quickly now, before I stop sharing my screen, I'll show you one more video, which will hopefully work before I pass you over to Leanne.
There's a number of questions coming in, Darren. One I think might be worth covering. Some people have asked what RSL means. Could you just...
So an RSL is a registered social landlord. Sorry, with the 3-letter acronyms, there was a lot of them. So they are your housing associations in Wales. So your likes of, I seen Bronavon Housing Association were on the screen. They're your Link Cymru's, your Pobls, Coastal Housing Association, the ATEB Group, Contrefi Conway. So they're the bodies that have in effect replaced some of the councils in Wales. So to give you, in Wales, there's 22 local authorities. Not all the local authorities have retained their housing stock. There was, a number of years ago now, a transfer of housing stock out to the council to housing associations, who we now call the RSLs. And so we've got 11 councils, local authorities in Wales that have still got housing stock and can still build housing stock. And we've got 11 local authorities who don't have any housing stock and don't now have a housing revenue account and do not build houses. So we'll rely on the registered social landlords to build in their areas.
Okay, thanks very much. Show the video. We'll get Leanne next, and then hopefully we'll get down to questions. Thank you very much.
Allwn ni'n disgwyl I weithio ar bwnc môr arloesol. Os dyn ni'n cael yn iawn, allwn ni'n newid bywydau pobl yng Nghymru, heddiw ac yn dyfodol, mewn ffordd hynod o positif.
So I don't know if Leanne's ready, or should I pass it back to Howard?
Well, are you ready, Leanne? We're ready for you.
I'm ready, Darren, yeah.
Here we go. Thank you.
I'll just try and share my screen. Right, can you all see that, hopefully?
I'm seeing it fine, thank you.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Darren. Yeah, as Darren obviously covers the IHP programme, I look after the MMC strategy for Welsh Government. I think I'll start by setting out some of the policy background to why we've taken this approach. Because Darren's already covered the challenge, the number of homes we need to build in the future. So I'll set up the policy framework for us. Housing is a devolved matter for us in Wales. Social housing, in particular, is a key commitment for Welsh Government. We are committed to investing in social housing for rent in Wales. Only recently did the Minister announce a budget boost to deliver more social homes in Wales. This brings the total social housing investment in Wales to circa 2 billion over this Assembly term. As Darren said, we rely on our social housing deliverers, our RSLs and local authorities to provide and manage our social homes in Wales. So collectively, we need to react quickly if we are to meet the target to provide enough social homes for tenants. This in theory means looking at fast solutions that can meet the demand, but also solutions that can help step up to the challenge to provide better homes for tenants, more of them and quicker. We think that MMC can play an important role in this challenge. So why are we considering MMC? I don't doubt you're all aware of the 2016 Farmer Report and the recommendations to modernise the construction industry for the future. Faced with the forecasted skills shortage, the report set out the necessity to consider alternative methods of construction and the use of pre-manufactured construction. Following this report, Welsh Government also published More Better, which also included a recommendation to consider modern methods of construction for housing. On top of that, in 2019, a wholesale review of the housing system in Wales was undertaken, and the Independent Affordable Housing Supply Review was published. This report set out a number of key improvements, one of which was trialling innovative techniques to increase the scale and pace of housing delivery in Wales. Another recommendation was also to develop a strategy to map out the use of offsite manufacturing to deliver near zero carbon social homes. At the point of publication of this review, the IHP programme was probably starting its third year. It is alongside this sort of backdrop that we decided to instigate the production of the report and publish it back just back in February. So Reimagining Social Homes was co-produced with the house building, construction and MMC sectors. At the moment, MMC does play a small part in the social landlords portfolio, I think thanks in part to the IHP programme. We want to see that increase. We're also aware this won't happen overnight. There's no switch to flick to swap wholly to MMC. We still need to retain a reliance on traditional build in the short and medium term. So we like to think of this as being an incremental approach to switching our portfolio from traditional build to MMC. So yeah, you can see the target ahead, 20,000 affordable homes in Wales, to build better homes, build more and quicker. So why are we thinking about MMC? Obviously, we need to build at scale and pace. It's acknowledged that some of our local authorities in Wales haven't developed social housing for over a decade and do not have the staff or resources to deliver quickly. MMC could potentially assist in those scenarios to provide rapid, oven-ready solutions for those partners. Traditional build will not quickly meet the demand. Obviously we're well aware of on-site delays due to weather, etc. The use of factory off-site built homes can in part avoid this scenario. Off-site manufacturing will also provide better quality products in terms of reduced snags on occupation and handover. MMC can also play a part in meeting the requirements for better quality, low carbon homes. The construction skills crisis, I think, it's been well documented. This will potentially get worse in light of Brexit and COVID-19. We believe that MMC could potentially provide an opportunity for safer off-site working practices, bringing in new entrants to the sector, such as underrepresented groups who wouldn't necessarily consider construction as a career. I think, and lastly, it's important to note that we see MMC as an opportunity to positive contribute towards the social and economic gains in Wales through the use of local supply chains and materials. What do we mean by MMC? I think obviously not all MMC is modern. In fact, in Wales, most of our 20 or so MMC producers are timber frame and panel producers. This is obviously a technology that goes back centuries. You're no doubt familiar with the image on the left of the slide, which is taken from the CAST MMC definitions framework. And most of our Indigenous producers in Wales are Category 2 and Category 3. And I think Darryl will say that this is obviously reflected in most of the MMC housing schemes in IHP have been timber frame or have an element of timber construction. So setting out the key objectives from the strategy, what we want is high quality homes for our tenants. We want to look at the assurances, warranties and accreditations for modern methods of construction. We want to look at high value and not a race to the bottom on cost solutions. I'll come on to that a bit later on. And we also want to develop our construction workforce for the future of MMC. We see MMC as a catalyst for obviously future social and economic development, and we would like to encourage collaboration between clients and producers to provide the best solution for tenants and the public purse. We would also like to back our Welsh businesses and MMC suppliers to produce the homes in Wales for our Welsh social tenants. So how will we do it? So some of our headline actions will include assurances and warranties. I think we believe that warranties and accreditations to support third-party lending are key to mainstreaming MMC and providing confidence for clients. There's a piece of work which is being led by UK government, which we're hoping to get involved with to try and push that forward on a UK-wide basis. Setting the standards for all new social homes in Wales. We would like to see our social housing built the Welsh way. Currently, all social housing in Wales needs to meet our design and space standards, which is called the DQR, to receive our social housing grant. As part of our grant appraisal, we are seeking to set out an expectation to see an increase in MMC developments. This is in tandem with our new DQR standard and technical scrutiny process, which is due to be launched shortly, I think next month. Through that, we will actively be looking to increase the number of social homes delivered using MMC. I think the increased environmental and near zero carbon standards also favour more modern methods of construction. The new standard will set out, our new DQR standard will set out our expectations in this area. We feel that MMC should in theory allow developers to meet the near zero carbon standards easier using modern methods of construction rather than traditional construction methods. We're also looking at procurement models and supply chains in Wales. I think we're seeking to use what we are calling a TOTEX approach to procurement. So that is looking at both the capital and the operational costs of the building, not just the lowest cost, not just the race to the bottom. Whilst there's data to suggest that MMC is more expensive currently than traditional build, MMC with better thermal efficiency performances and ease of maintenance has the potential to reduce operational and running costs for landlords and tenants. We think that could potentially offset the increased costs up front for the longer term operational costs of running a home. We would like to see our Welsh MNC producers and their supply chains benefit from the investment the Welsh Government is placing into social housing. I think whilst that, no, both of those points are important to us, we understand that they are subject to current procurement rules and regulations. So we understand this will be a challenge for us. We will explore how we can meet this aspiration within that regulatory procurement framework as part of the implementation plan of the strategy. So in terms of skills and qualifications, against the backdrop of the construction skills shortage, we will be seeking to ensure that our current construction workforce is properly skilled to meet the future demands for house building, which includes MMC. Darren mentioned about collaborations and partnerships for IHP. This is something we would like to explore more with the social housing sector. We feel that the sharing of best practice for modern methods will facilitate a position of mentoring for those who are not so familiar with the technologies and the process of MMC. Obviously, this is in line with the procurement parameters I outlined earlier, but we would like to look at how we could use collective buying power and order certainty to provide benefits for Welsh MMC producers, but also look at how we could use it to possibly have economies of scale through and reduce costs. We're also looking at how we could explore collaboration to MNC design and delivery. This could possibly look at standardization of design, DFMA approaches to benefit both the MNC market in Wales, but also whether that approach could lend itself to other capital programs, not just housing, and look at other offset manufacturing solutions for construction infrastructure projects. I think lastly, it's important to point out that we see MMC principles. It'll help us meet wider government policies such as economic action plan, better jobs closer to home, circular economy goals, carbon saving targets. So they're the key sort of policy we're looking to attach to the MMC framework. But we're also looking at what levers we can use as a government to push forward MMC. I've mentioned procurement. We're also possibly looking at levers via the planning process, how we can use our publicly owned land holdings to further more social homes, use more MMC, and other non-housing related policy levers. So I think that's almost it for me. I just want to leave you with some key messages. I think it's clear that we are committed as a government to exploring modern methods for social housing delivery. We genuinely do believe it will help us deliver better homes at scale and pace. And it also provides us with an opportunity to maximise the wider policy gains that MNC can bring. But I think we are aware that it's not without its challenges. There are plenty of opportunities for us to do this, but we are aware of the risks that this new way of working brings. So the next steps for us, we published a strategy back in February. We'll be looking to publish the implementation plan sometime during the autumn. We're currently working on that at the moment. And there'll be a further update around that time. So I think that's all from me. So I'll hand back to Howard now, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Leanne. I don't know whether you can stop screen sharing so that we can see your face. Thank you very much.
I just chip in, just say I think the best thing, we've got a number of questions. Would you whiz through them rather than bring people on screen?
Oh, well, what I'm going to suggest, if we try and keep to the hour, we've got a number of them that are anonymous. So I think I'll take the anonymous ones first, and then say to everyone else that we'll ask Darren and Leanne to answer them by email so that we can try and keep to our time. We'll go over by a few minutes. So I'll take the first anonymous.
Thank you.
Could you explain what monitoring procedures have been put in place for the homes? Performance gap can be persistent. I'm wondering if full POE and reporting will be made available for industry learning.
So I'll take that one. So my background is actually in stats and research before taking over this housing programme. And I think one of the reasons I was brought in was around the monitoring and evaluation of the Innovative Housing Programme. As a government, we've spent or committed to spend £90 million at this stage on houses. And what we really need to do, as my slide said earlier, IHP was around testing and learning to understand which houses we should support in the future. We have committed, I think, around about £2 billion worth of funding in Welsh Government for affordable housing in this Assembly term. Going forward, we want to learn from what IHP has funded and what are the correct solutions. So there is a monitoring and evaluation package within the programme. Any scheme that secures funding, 1 in 6 of those houses on site will have monitoring equipment in them to monitor in-use performance. And coming out in the next sort of 4 or 5 weeks will be the construction's lessons learned from the IHP Year 1 schemes. And then we intend those to be done on a regular basis going forward. So you'll have Year 2 construction lessons learned. So there'll be some reports coming out in the next few weeks around learning from IHP, but there'll also be definite data coming out around performance gaps and how these houses perform. So they might have been built as EPCA on a paper, but do they actually come out EPCA in use?
Thanks very much, Darren. I got another one, it's anonymous. What MMC types will be supported in IHP4? Would it just be Cat1 volumetric? This is to Leanne. And no volumetric manufacturers in Wales as far as I'm aware. Do you want me to repeat the question?
Yeah, sorry,
Yeah?
I just unmuted my microphone. We're not curtailing the types of MMC that we'll be looking at under IHP4, and yeah, there is a recognition there aren't any volumetric producers currently in Wales.
Okay, get another one in snappily. What is Welsh Government definition of zero carbon for homes?
I don't know whether there is a definition yet for zero carbon, interestingly. Lots of people are using EPCA, but we're well aware that that doesn't actually mean zero carbon. It doesn't even probably mean low carbon in some instances. But what we are looking at is whole life carbon. And so the construction, the embodied energy of the building, the in-use energy as well. And there's actually some pieces of work through IHP funded schemes. And I know Wood Knowledge Wales are on the call, but we've got some schemes where there's additional work going on around how you measure the embodied energy of a building as well as its performance and its lifetime costs on carbon. So although we haven't actually got, in my eyes, a tight definition yet on what zero carbon is, the intention is that we go to zero carbon of homes as part of that. If you look at our affordable housing review that was done last year, the recommendation is that all social housing in Wales from next year becomes EPCA, and that all houses in Wales from 2025 would have to hit that target of EPCA, which gives us some room, I suppose, in the next 25 years to hit the 2050 target.
Okay. Are you still there, Darren?
Yep.
Yep, okay. I've got one more anonymous, which I think we'll quickly take, and then I'll ask Andrew just to sum up. But this one is quite long. I totally support the Welsh Government push to increase and speed up the process to build more homes quickly and better. However, there are a number of other elements that prevent or slow down numbers of homes and slow down the process. Planning, highways, sectional agreement, SAB. Many elements conflict, which is slowing down the rate to get to site. It also can delay programs during construction. E.g. SB, this needs to be looked at. I think the person here is asking how you manage to get things speedily done.
Yeah, I don't disagree with the anonymous comment. It's interesting that the minister's aware of these issues, and we are working to ensure that some of these hurdles can be overcome. The interesting thing is, and we keep saying this, that local authorities in Wales at the moment have got some of the most generous permitted development rights around, and under COVID we were able to build 19 field hospitals in 9 weeks. That we want to use the art of possible to try and speed up some of these processes. But we are aware of them, and we do understand that, and I think they'll also come out in the IHP Constructions Lessons Learned from Year 1, having seen the draft report. So we acknowledge that they're there. They're not all going to be resolved overnight, but they do need resolving.
Okay, I think what we have to do now, because people are beginning to drop out, and it's been really informative, but what we'll do is we'll put all the questions that are outstanding to Darren and to Leanne, and we will send out an email to people with the answers. So I'm going to now hand over to Andrew.
Thank you, Howard, very much. What a fabulous last hour we've enjoyed. Some very valuable information passed on, and judging from the number of questions, you can see how interesting it was to those attending. So thank you, Darren and Leanne in particular, for giving up your valuable time and giving of your knowledge. Thank you to Howard and John for hosting. Obviously, from a bias point of view, I'm delighted that you're pushing the percentage of timber frame up in Wales in affordable homes, and to get to 60% is to your credit. That's the sort of figure that we're hoping might be evident across the UK. Interestingly, there was a question about cost. I have in the chat box put a link to a document that was produced by RLB last year, which actually indicated that in affordable homes, timber frame is 1% less expensive than masonry. But obviously in terms of speed of erection, it's about 20% better. So some food for thought there. Darren, Leanne, thank you so much once again. A great hour, well spent. Thank you for your time. And as Howard said, there are a few questions that have been specifically asked by individuals, and we'll let you have those in due course. But for now, ladies and gents, thanks for joining us. Enjoy your rest of the afternoon and have a good weekend. Cheers. Bye-bye now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Leanne, for your time. It was great.
No, you're welcome.
And thank you, Darren.